Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our monthly webinar for the Early Education Contractors. This webinar is being presented by the California Department of Education's Early Education Division, and we are joined by our colleagues from the Fiscal Administrative Service Division. This webinar is being held on May 18th, 2023, and is scheduled to run from 4 p.m. until 5 p.m. And with that, I would like to welcome Stephen Profiter, Director of our Early Education Division.
Thanks, Angela. Hey, everyone. I am thrilled to be here with you all and grateful to have the honor of working with this group of passionate professionals in the Early Ed Division on behalf of children and on behalf of you all. So we're really excited to connect with you all today, answer as many of your questions as possible. It's kind of wild to think that we're already in May. One of the highlights, of course, in May is the governor's May revise. And we're appreciative that even though we're in a deficit this year, and noted that the deficit grew between the governor's January budget and the May revise, much of the proposals for early education are continuing to be honored and maintained. So I really appreciate that commitment from the administration on their commitment to early education, as well as some of the things that we're seeing in the way of messaging from the Assembly and the Senate. And we're really looking forward to how budgeting negotiations shape up here over the coming month or so. So, on that note, we're here to discuss, present updates on investment proposals. Before I move on, I just want to express my appreciation for the team that you see here on these webinars, and anybody you may not see. It takes many folks to make this all work, and so we appreciate the team, appreciate you all for your engagement here. And we'll continue to host webinars or even office hours as a kind of an alternative way to engage different formats and such related to different projects, but really all with the goal of keeping everyone updated on what's happening in UPK. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Virginia Early to introduce herself.
Thank you so much. And just I really appreciate everyone that's here. I'm Virginia Early. I'm the administrator of the policy office within the Early Education Division. So everything budget related and guidance for our programs, my office is involved in, including helping with these webinars, and just so happy to have everyone here. I'm going to now just turn it over to Angela for some key things related to her moderation today.
Before we get started, Mai, can you go ahead and click OK for the local recording? It's showing on the screen. And with that, I'd like to welcome all of you here today and introduce myself and our team. My name is Angela Data, and I'm part of the Director's Office at the Early Education Division in the California Department of Education. I'll be your moderator for today. To help answer your questions and to make this webinar run smoothly, we have a great team of about 25 staff members here with us today from CDE, including staff from the Early Education Policy Office, Universal Pre-Kindergarten Support Implementation Office, Program Quality Improvement Office, Early Education System Improvement Office, Administrative and Fiscal Services, Applied Data Research and Evaluation. And as I said before, we are also joined by our wonderful colleagues from the Fiscal Administration Service Division. Our team is committed to being as responsive as possible and will not be able to answer every question. Just a reminder, our chat box is disabled. CDE will be able to share links with you there, but you are unable to chat with us. Please utilize the Q&A feature to ask us questions. I also want to warmly mention our staff who ensures that our Zoom link is live and working, and that there is closed captioning available for everyone to utilize. To turn it on, you click on the CC button on the bottom right of your screen. When you ask questions, do give us as much detail as possible before clicking that submit button, for example, which contract, age of the students, and other important information. We've noticed over the last couple of webinars that some of the questions submitted are not complete, and it makes it hard for us to answer those questions. Please don't feel the need to rush to get the question into the queue. It's okay to take a moment to accurately type your question before you click send. Now let's take a look at this afternoon's agenda. We'll start with some exciting news about early action budget items that were approved by the governor as of May 15th, 2023, and outline the CDE's plans for early action allocations. Then give a brief overview of the budget process for those that will find a refresher helpful, and an update on the state fiscal condition, which is helpful context for understanding the budget proposals. Then we'll dive into the May revised proposal for Universal Trans Kindergarten, or UTK, and Universal Pre-Kindergarten, or UPK, the California State Preschool Program, or CSPP, and other investments. And following with that, legislative plans. We'll then wrap up with current contracts and grants, updates, upcoming events and notifications, and close with a question and answer session if we have time. And that's a lot to cover, so we'll hopefully get through it all in time. While we will work through questions in real life time, so you can continue putting your questions in the queue and we'll answer them as the webinar is happening. You don't have to wait till the very end. We'll visit some questions that have come through the Q&A function, as well as others that you may have left up through our other modes. So if you emailed us, we will have some of those already pre-answered and ready to go. As we do with each webinar, we will take unanswered questions and work them internally to get answers and post to our website for our FAQ page. And now, without further ado, I hand it over to Virginia to start the early action budget items.
Thanks so much, Angela, and just so happy to be here with all of you. So as Angela mentioned, we wanted to start this webinar off with discussing some recently signed early action legislation the governor signed on May 15th. So you may be thinking to yourself, why is this called early action? Why are these called early action budget items? That's because these budget items were voted on by the legislature and signed by the governor before the normal budget development process was over. So that means, unlike for other budget items, these are already the law rather than just proposals. So these early action pieces are the law. Everything else that we talk about related to budget are proposals. So we want to be really clear that there's a difference there. So what are the items? So there are two different bills that affect early education: Assembly Bill, or AB 100, and Assembly Bill, or AB 110. So AB 100 allows for CDE to use 5.3 million Proposition 98 general fund and 4.4 million non-Proposition 98 general fund to support the extension of family fee waivers from July 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2023. So what does this mean for you? So we'll be releasing some email guidance shortly, but essentially what it will say is that as soon as possible, contractors must issue a notice of action extending the fee waiver until September 30th, 2023 for each family enrolled that has a family fee. On the NOA, or the NOAA, or the notice of action, depending on which way you call it, contractors must state that the fees the family is assessed with begin being collected October 1st, 2023. For any new families enrolled, the contractor must assess the family fee at the time of enrollment and note on the notice of action that the fees will be waived through September 30th, and all families will be responsible to pay fees listed on the NOAA, again, beginning October 1st, 2023. CDE is in the process of finalizing the fee schedule for the 23-24 year, and thank you for your patience on this. We will release that schedule as soon as possible. However, we didn't want to wait until we're able to release the schedule to give you some initial guidance about this early action budget item, since we understand that your families probably are very curious now what's happening. So AB 110 is covering the statutory language for the extension of the family fee waiver until September 30th, 2023. And it also includes language authorizing CDE to issue temporary rate increases to contractors that exceed the existing contract reimbursement rates that are in Education Code. So I'm now going to turn it over to Alan from our Fiscal and Administrative Services Division, Early Education, Nutrition, and Fiscal Services, for him to share some more information about our plans for allocating the early action items. Alan?
Thank you, Virginia. As she said, my name is Alan Lynch, and I am a manager in the Fiscal and Administrative Services Division's Early Education and Nutrition Fiscal Services Unit. I am going to briefly touch on the plan for these early action allocations, first starting with the family fee waivers that Virginia just spoke about. So for the family fee waiver allocations, AB 110 provides additional funding authority to ensure contractors have sufficient funds to cover the cost of family fee waivers between July 1, 2023 and September 30th, 2023. Therefore, CSPP contractors will receive an allocation to cover the costs of the family fee waivers. Allocations for these family fee waivers will be included as part of the CSPP Budget Act amendment, expected to be released in the fall of 2023. Next, we have the temporary rate increases. CDE is working on a methodology for allocating funds to CSPP contractors. CDE plans to issue one-time lump sum payments that will not be provided as an augmentation to the CSPP contract, but will instead be issued as an apportionment payment. As many of you may be familiar, funds provided via an apportionment payment that go to LEAs, including charter schools, must be distributed through the county treasurer. When this apportionment payment is made, LEAs will need to contact their county treasurer's office to coordinate the transfer of funds to their agency. The CDE will be releasing an email to those subscribed to the Early Education Division's email distribution list with more details on these allocations. And I will now pass it back to Virginia to give an overview of the budget process and the state fiscal condition.
Thank you so much, Alan. So budget process timeline. Many of you have probably seen this chart before, but for those of you that haven't or find a helpful refresher, we wanted to just remind ourselves of where we are in the process and the timeline. So January 10th this year, the governor released the proposed budget. There are a number of proposals in there. In early February, February 1st, we got the trailer bill language, and the trailer bill language is essentially language that trails the budget. So the budget bill is mostly things related to dollar amounts, whereas trailer bill has changes to law that are necessary to implement the budget. And so we got additional details about the proposals at that time. For example, some proposals that we may have shared with you earlier around what the second adult in a TK classroom might have to meet. We then went through some budget subcommittee hearings that began in late February. And now where we are is that on May 12th, the May revision was released. And so this is really the point where looking at updated data, both in terms of tax returns and other economic factors, the governor takes an opportunity to revise his January proposal based on all of that factors. So that's just what happened. And sometimes that means that we have revisions to the trailer bill that was proposed in February. Between now and early June, there are budget committee hearings that are happening where the legislature will be considering the governor's proposal, voting on their own proposals. There'll be opportunities for public comment. And then June 15th, the legislature is statutorily required to send a budget bill to the governor. And then July 1st is the start of the new fiscal year. So sometimes people say, well, why does the state, only tell me things, after July 1st and the fiscal year started July 1st? Well, we just like to remind people of this timeline because often CDE doesn't know what the changes in law are until around that same timeline too. So just wanting to elevate it for you all so you know where we are in the process. So we are very, as we head into this next section, really want to highlight a couple of things. First of all, the proposals we're about to share with you, with exception of the early action items that we just covered, everything from here on out when we're talking about the budget are proposals. So in order for the final budget to be passed into law, it needs to be passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. So just really wanting to clarify that at CDE, we'll be working closely with the legislature, the Department of Finance, and the governor's administration to support refinement of these proposals and support elevating what we hear from our programs and the needs and research on what's best for children and all of those good pieces to help inform the final budget. So next slide. So Steve mentioned this a little bit, but just really wanting to pull this up on a slide and just see the numbers a little bit more. The state fiscal condition is weaker than it was previously estimated in January. So in January, the governor's proposed budget for 23-24 did a great job maintaining early education programs despite a projected $22.5 billion shortfall. Since January, this shortfall has grown by $9.3 billion to a total of $31.5 billion at the time of the May revision. So despite this, we're very happy to share, as Steve mentioned, that the May revision continues to recognize the importance of early education. There are no major cuts to the rollout of TK, state preschool, early education, and their continued investment in these multi-billion-dollar investments is very exciting, especially when we think about what happened historically when the state faced economic conditions that were challenging. And we're very happy for this continued focus on the importance of early education because we all know what a difference it can really make for children. So I'm now going to pass it over to Eddie Tanimoto, who is going to go deeper into the May revised proposals.
Awesome. Thanks, Virginia. My name is Eddie Tanimoto, and I'm the budget consultant in the policy office of the Early Education Division. I have the pleasure of diving into the details of the governor's proposed budget, and I'll have our team drop the link to the budget summary in trailable language now for folks that want to follow along. We'll start off with the proposal around Universal Transitional Kindergarten, or UTK. As a reminder, UTK is being phased in over 4 years, which started in 2021 to 2022 with planning and infrastructure development and additional access for 4-year-old children, and is increasing in increments of 3 months of age per year from 2022-23 through 2024-25, which is when all 4-year-old children will be eligible. The May Revise continues to support the planned schedule for UTK expansion with investments. However, the May Revise updates the estimated cost for TK expansion. The May Revise updates the cost for the first year of TK expansion, or our current year, at now estimating at $357 million for the first year cost to expand access to all children turning 5 years old between September 2nd and February 2nd. This was revised from $604 million, Proposition 98, or P98, in the governor's January proposed budget due to reduced TK enrollment projections at May revision. And the May Revise also includes $283 million for the first year cost for one additional certificated or classified staff person in every TK class. This was revised from $337 million P98 in the governor's January proposed budget. The May Revise also estimates $597 million for the second year cost, this is the upcoming fiscal year, to expand access to all children turning 5 years old between September 2nd and April 2nd. This is revised from $690 million P98 in the governor's January proposed budget. And there's no change in the May revision currently for the second year cost for one additional certificated or classified staff person in every TK class, but we will be watching this closely to see if this does come up in the future. It is important to note that, as Virginia said, these changes are not cuts to TK or a delay in implementation. They're simply revised estimates of the actual cost based on updated data and information. We understand that many CSPP contractors continue to have concerns about how the continued implementation of UTK might impact your contracts and programs. And we want everyone to know that we are committed to working together with you to address any unintended consequences, and have been working together to identify barriers that may exist to serving more 3-year-old children, serving more children with disabilities, and more dual language learners. We also want to take a moment to highlight that the local mixed delivery planning grant includes requirements that planning across the mixed delivery system happen when it comes to how to serve more 3-year-old children, and support with recruiting eligible children to your programs, so that these investments have a larger cumulative impact through more children overall having access to high quality early education experiences. We know California currently only serves a fraction of those eligible for the California State Preschool Program and Head Start, and also know that mixed income programs have stronger and longer lasting positive child outcomes. We hope that these past historic investments will let California serve many more of the 387,000 plus 3- and 4-year-old children eligible but not served by any CDE program. Next slide. Now, for a slightly different set of additions, we would like to highlight some statutory changes that affect TK. The January budget included a list of proposed requirements specific to the second adult in a TK classroom that would apply beginning in the 2028 to 29 school year. The second adult would only need to meet one of these requirements, which include things such as holding a credential approved by the CTC, or participation in various professional preparation programs, holding any level of a child development permit, or participating in supervised practicum experience, among many other requirements. The May revise adds 2 additional options to the list of proposed requirements specific to the second adult in a TK classroom, in addition to these January proposals. The new additions to this list are on the screen here, but I'll read them out as well. So the adult has completed at least 6 units in early childhood education or child development, or both. And the adult has sufficient related experience as determined by the local educational agency. For the second one, it's important to note that under this proposal, it would only be an option until June 30th, 2030. After that, you would have to meet one of the other requirements. Additionally, the May revise carries forward the January proposal to allow for children with summer birthdays to enroll in early admittance TK, or ETK. Specifically, under this proposal, LEAs can, at their choice, enroll all children who will be eligible for TK at full implementation into their programs before full implementation. However, the LEA will not be paid for those children until the child's 5th birthday. The specific cutoff is children who will have their 5th birthday before the first day of instruction in the subsequent school year. So you can find that in the Trailer Bill language as well. Finally, the May revise includes language to allow the CDE to allocate returned or collected UPK planning and implementation grant funds to the Early Education Teacher Development Grant. An example of this would be if the funds are allocated to a charter school who does not plan to offer TK any longer. Next slide. Awesome. So now an update on the May revision as it relates to the California State Preschool Program. We already mentioned how the early action items, which include an extension of the family fee waivers until September 30th, 2023, is now law. Well, the May revise incorporates that and does not make any changes to that law. The May revise also increases the proposed cost of living adjustment, or the COLA, increase from 8.13%, which was proposed back in January, to 8.22%. However, the May revision also adjusts the cost of providing this COLA by 52 million P98 and 28 million general fund due to revised estimates of the number of contractors that would get a COLA. Now, we also want to note here that under the government's proposal, not all contractors would get a COLA. Only contractors in low-cost counties will get a COLA under the governor's proposal. Additionally, the governor's January budget included a proposal in Trailer Bill language to expand CSPP neighborhood school eligibility, formerly referred to as free or reduced price meal eligibility, or FRPM, to include families in which a parent or guardian's workplace is within the attendance boundary of a qualified free or reduced price meal school. The May revise maintains this language and introduces a new proposal to allow children who live in or whose parents work in a neighborhood meeting the requirements of CSPP neighborhood school eligibility to enroll at any CSPP site, not limited to just those sites in the neighborhood. There are two things that we want to note with this though. One, in order to qualify, the parent or guardian must work in this location for more than 10 hours per week. And two, this applies to eligibility for CSPP and does not change priority. So the program and family would still have to follow the existing priority order. Next slide. Awesome. So lastly, I would like to highlight some of the other investments from the governor's proposed budget. Let's start with educator workforce. So in recent years, $3.3 billion has been invested in the educator workforce. This year includes no new investments, but the governor has noted that they are committed to continuing multi-year investments from previous years. One proposal we would like to highlight is that the May revision includes statutory amendments to allow for comparable California teaching credentials to be issued to any U.S. military service member or spouse who possesses a valid out-of-state teaching or services credential. Next, we've got universal school meals. The budget protects the funding for universal access to subsidized school meals and the additional enhanced meal rate. During the January governor's proposed budget, it was noted that California will spend over $1.4 billion to reimburse school meals and ensure all students who want a meal will have access to 2 free meals each day. Due to greater demand for meals reimbursed in the paid category that was projected for the 2022 to 23 and 2023 to 24 fiscal years at the governor's budget, the May revision includes an additional $300 million to fully fund the program in the 2022 to 23 and 2023 to 24 fiscal years. Additionally, we have facilities. There's $550 million for the California Preschool Transitional Kindergarten and Full Day Kindergarten Facilities Grant Program is proposed to be delayed until the fiscal year 2024 to 25. This is not new information as it was in the January proposal as well, but we did want to highlight it as well for folks. Lastly, I would like to highlight the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, or ELOP. The May revise includes language to allow expanded learning opportunities programs serving children in any grade that are operating on an LEA campus to be exempt from licensing, but it requires expanded learning opportunities programs that serve children in TK and K that are not located on an LEA campus to be licensed. And with that, I'll pass it over to Virginia Early to discuss legislative plans.
Thanks so much, Eddie. So as we mentioned, or as I mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the timeline, right? We're now in the states where the legislature is thinking through what they want to vote on and pass in their budget. And at this point, and this is the most recent information as we have it, the Senate and the Assembly have both released some high-level plans, although the committees are still meeting and still determining, the specifics. But we wanted to just flag for you the specifics of both the Senate and the Assembly plan. And ultimately, what has to happen is the Assembly and the Senate and the governor all have to agree before we have a budget. So you can see that there's some differences. So the Senate budget plan, as proposed, has moves toward childcare rate reform by increasing rates to support and stabilize childcare providers, including state preschool, with $800 million in new funds, which would start in 24-25, so not this year. And lumping that together with some other funds to provide around $1 billion to increase childcare and preschool rates. There's also a piece in there around family fees and overhauling the current family fee structure, including for state preschool programs, to prevent low-income families from losing access to childcare because they can't afford fees. And then there's, some on preschool and TK facilities. They are proposing to reject the governor's reduction to the school facility program and the delay of that $550 million for the preschool, transitional kindergarten, and full day kindergarten facility grant program. And then additionally, the Senate plan would provide a little over around $1.1 billion to address a variety of workforce needs, a non-competitive block grant that would address workforce. And we can go into more detail there, although this is still very much a proposal. We don't know what's moving forward yet. And finally, increasing stipends for the teacher residency investment, $150 million for that, for residency participants. The assembly plan, they've released, again, you know, they're in different stages of what's being released publicly, but they have released that their plan increases childcare funding by 25.44% through an increased COLA. Although I don't think we have details on exactly how that would be applied and whether it would be applied to everyone or low-cost counties or high-cost counties or all of that. We're very much still in a point where the houses are working to fill out the details. They're working to respond to the May revised proposal. And as the weeks roll forward, we'll start to see a lot more specifics. So really, like, none of this is the law yet. These are all proposals, but we know that people are curious about what the proposals are. So we wanted to flag. And I'm hoping we can also put in the chat the links to the Senate and the Assembly budget plans as well, so that you have them. One person was asking in the chat, I'll just quickly answer this before I turn it over to Alana, is how do they come to agreement? And they have conversations. And the legislature, both houses of the legislature, have made it very clear that childcare and preschool is a priority of theirs. So I'm sure they will be bringing that up in conversations with the governor. At this point, I'm now going to welcome Alana from the Early Education Systems Improvement Office to share some grant and contract updates.
Good afternoon, everyone. We've been talking about a lot of proposals. Let's talk about some things that we already know, things that were passed in previous budgets and that are continuing to do some good work. So hello, if you don't know me, I'm Alana Pinsler. I'm in the Early Education System Improvement Office, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on just some of the grants and contracts that have passed previously and just an update on where they are now. The first one is the California State Preschool Program Quality Rating Improvement System Block Grant, which is a lot to say. So I'm going to say CSPP QRAS Block Grant instead. And guess what? That just had an RFA, or request for funding application, released on Monday. And the grant will provide about $50 million annually in funding on a non-competitive basis to counties and county consortia to maintain and improve the quality of preschool programs. That RFA will be due on June 23 through SNAP Survey, which is the online system. The webpage is still uploading, and so if you want any more information about that RFA or about the funding, you can send an email to qcc@cde.ca.gov. And also, to put on your calendars, a technical assistance webinar about the RFA will be held on May 23rd from 10 to 11 a.m. Again, we don't have the Zoom registration for that yet, but if you're interested, you can send an email to qcc@cde.ca.gov. Another grant that was passed in the 2001-2002 budget, 2001-2002 budget, is the Early Education Teacher Development Grant. This funding has been out since July of last year, and the first round of reporting just came back in April. Most of the grantees have been utilizing this first reporting period to plan and to be really strategic with their funding, as their aim is to increase the number of highly qualified staff in CSPP programs and in transitional kindergarten programs within their service area. Next, the Preschool Learning Foundations, or PLFs, are being revised, and they will be released this fall. The revision includes recent research in the field of child development with an emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The revisions also include representation of children's speech in several languages, including Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, and more. This is just a partial list of what's being included in the revision. Keep a lookout on your emails and various different listservs for more information as the fall draws near. The DRDP, or Desired Results Developmental Program, they are also having an adaptation right now, and those adaptations are going to align with the changes in the PLF that I just previously mentioned. There's also recruitment for participation in the DRDP if you'd like to be a part of changes for that. That will be sent out shortly. So again, take a look in your email and your inboxes if you are interested in engaging in this important work of our state's early assessment tool. And finally, last but not least, the early identification tool was passed last year to highlight screening tools that can serve as evidence-based to identify precursors to early literacy delays and developmental disabilities in children ages 2 through 6. A legislative report for the EIT is underway, detailing a process and tools per statute. Our office, or the EESI office, is connected with some tool developers for early identification, and we are seeking to gather information from the field to inform that process. In addition, our team is collaborating on the possibilities of enlightenment regarding other current and planned early identification work, and hopes to create lots of connections for parents and teachers. Let's welcome Crystal to share a reminder about the program self-evaluation.
Thank you, Alana. So Management Bulletin 23-04, the fiscal year 2022-23 program self-evaluation for California State Preschool Program contractors was released on April 4th, 2023. Just a reminder that the fiscal year 22-23 annual PSE is being completed via a survey and is due to the CDE Early Education Division by 5 p.m. on June 1st, 2023. On the fiscal year 22-23 PSE webpage, you will find a link to the PSE survey, a copy of the survey questions that CSPP contractors will be required to respond to, which is a resource available for you to use prior to completing the online survey, and a list of frequently asked questions with the answers to those questions. You will also find the PowerPoint slides from the fiscal year 22-23 PSE webinar that was held on April 13th, a copy of the EED CSPP program instrument, and additional FAQs related to the Early Childhood Environment Rating Scale, ECHRS requirements. When completing the online survey, you are able to save your progress and return to complete the survey if you cannot complete it all at one time. And upon submission of the PSE survey, you will also receive a confirmation that it has been received by the CDE EED. And now I'll hand things back over to Angela to close us out.
Thank you, Crystal. We also would like to take a moment to highlight some upcoming events. We'll be hosting a Child Development Management Information System, or CDMIS, training webinar on May 24th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. The next UPK Mixed Delivery Quality and Access Work Group meeting will be held on May 25th, 2023 from 12:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. These meetings are open to the public, and the agenda and link to register can be found on the CDE website. We will share the link now in the chat. We'll host a Supporting Dual Language Learners and California State Preschool Programs webinar on June 13th, 2023 from 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. And we'll send the link to attend closer to the webinar. This is the last webinar in our Dual Language Learner series. We had a series of 3 different webinars in this series. And as a reminder, recordings and slides for all of these webinars will be posted to forthcoming Dual Language Learner support page that will be posted. We'll announce when these resources are posted through our Early Education Division email distribution list, serve. So if you are, can I also get the link to that listserv also put in there? So if you are not part of that listserv, you can join and register so that you get that information as well. I know most of you probably are already, but if you are not part of that list, you probably would like to join so you can get that information. All right. Next slide, please. Now, we have been working really hard to respond to all your questions in the Q&A feature, but wanted to highlight a couple of questions during this time. We'll go ahead and answer some of these questions live, and I'll be going over everything. Before we go into that question and answer, I did see a couple of people asking us about posting the recording of this webinar and the slides. And yes, we will be posting this recording and the slides so that you can access them as soon as possible. All right, so our first question we're going to jump into is from Mary. And her question is, do you know yet is the family fee schedule will change for the fiscal year 23-24, or will we continue to use the current schedule to assess family fees? And I'm going to call on Virginia Early to answer this question for us live.
I'm so sorry, Angela. Can you just, I heard family fees, but I was so focused on responding to a question in the chat. I think I just need it repeated.
That's okay. I can repeat it. Mary asked, do you know yet is the family fee schedule will change for the fiscal year 23-24, or will we continue to use the current schedule to assess family fees?
Yes, so the fee schedule will change. As I mentioned, when we were talking about the early action items, we are working on updating it. We apologize that it is not out yet. We know that you all are enrolling now. So at this point, because it's not out yet, you should be using the fee schedule, the most recent fee schedule that is out. And then our family fee schedule, when it is released, will include guidance. I know there are some questions in the Q&A around, will you be able to reassess for the fee if the family requests to lower the fee? Yes, you will. So if the new fee is lower than what they're currently paying, there would be an option for that to be addressed. So please be on the lookout. We're aiming to get that out as soon as we can. There's just a lot of different moving pieces happening on the guidance front, which has been a challenge. So we thank you all for your grace.
Thank you, Virginia. The next question is from Sabrina Lynn, and I know we did get a lot of questions around COLA, and her question was, can you repeat about the COLA for CSPP? It is for all CSP programs. I guess her question is, can you just give a little more information and go over what was already said? So I'm going to call on Virginia, and then to answer a little bit repeating about COLA. And then also there was a question that kind of goes along with this to give a little more detail. Who would get the COLA under the governor's proposal and who wouldn't? And I'm hoping that Corey, after Virginia's done giving a little more detail, can go into a little bit about the low cost county so that we get some more information, because I think there was about 10 or 15 questions on the cost of living adjustment. All right, Virginia, start us off.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I just want to start by saying we said low cost county because it's essentially a very complicated comparison that involves a lot of different numbers being compared to each other. And we sort of wanted to summarize the end result rather than sort of say, compare this number and then check it against that number and then et cetera, et cetera. So the statute doesn't say only low-cost counties. There's not a definition of low-cost counties, but the effect of this policy is that it does go to low-cost counties. So I can explain a little bit more. So January 1st, 2022, we the rates for the California, previous to that, the entire state was on the standard reimbursement rate for the California State Preschool Program. On January 1st, 2022, programs received the greater of either the 75th percentile of the 2018 Regional Market Rate Survey or whatever rate they'd had before. So you look at your rate before. If your rate before was, say, at the 84th percentile, you didn't get a cut down to the 75th percentile. You got to keep your previous rate. But those whose maybe their previous standard reimbursement rate was, say, at the 50th percentile of their market cost, they got increased up to the 75th percentile. So the rates were set at the 75th percentile for no one was getting less than the 75th percentile, but some counties were getting more than the 75th percentile. Because of the way the statute is written, and you can sort of imagine which counties were, because we had a single state rate that applied for everyone. There are some counties that, had been receiving the same, maybe a small rural county had been receiving the same rate as a large metropolitan county. And you can imagine how there would be differences in cost, right? So the counties that didn't move over to the new 75th percentile tended to be those lower cost counties. The COLA then was applied not to the folks that had the 75th percentile, but to folks that their rates were based on the old rate, not based on the new one. And so the effect of that is that essentially with the COLA, we increase sort of that historic standard reimbursement rate, increased by last year's COLA, and then compare it to the 75th percentile. And the county gets whichever is higher. Now, it happens that that means, what effectively that means is that low-cost counties are getting increased because their rate was above the 75th percentile. They're getting an increase to go further above the 75th percentile, whereas those higher cost counties, where the dollar amount in the rate may be, higher, the sort of how far that pays for in the local area is not, and they're not getting a COLA. So that was like incredibly contorted. I hope I didn't confuse everyone. Corey, you may need to come in and help for wherever I was misleading or confusing. The reason we summarize it as low-cost counties is essentially because not everyone gets it, and it's really complicated to explain why not everyone gets it, and sort of breaking it down to the sort of bottom line result of that. Corey, please help if there's something needs to be added.
Yeah, I think so. Virginia has it right. I think generically for those that are asking, in what Eddie presented, the low cost counties would be effectively those still reimbursed off the SRR. We don't consider it the standard reimbursement rate. It's just your reimbursement rate. But in December of 2021, I believe, the standard reimbursement rate for all CSPP programs was about $51. I think so. And this is going back in time. And when we applied the 6.56% COLA this year, as Virginia said, that got applied to the rate as it existed December 2021, which would have been like $50 something dollars at the time. And the COLA was applied to that. Then we compared it to York County's 75th percentile of the regional market rate. A 6.56% COLA was, in general, that brought contractors up who were at the SRR up to 55.27. So I think for those that are listening, if you have a rate of 55.27 right now within your CSPP contract, that's where the COLA is going to be applied. If your rate is something higher, that means that your rate changed as of January 1st, 2022. And that's where Virginia's sort of saying that's considered more of the high cost county. So I hope that provides a little more concrete example. So I think look for your current reimbursement rate. 55.27 is sort of the one that you'll want to look for that would be receiving a COLA under the current proposal.
Thank you, Corey and Virginia. That was wonderful. I see a lot of thank yous and happy faces coming through for that explanation. So it's much appreciated. All right, so I'm going to call on Eddie for this next question. This is from D, I think it's Spicer. Are the family fee waivers and the whole harmless continued beyond 2023?
Awesome. Thank you for that. Sorry about that. Was trying to find my unmute button. So for the family fee waiver, as Virginia mentioned, and as mentioned a few times in this webinar, the family fee is looking to be continued, or is going to be continued from July 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2023. As of right now, there is no word on what's going to happen moving forward beyond September 30th. And this is for both CDE and CDSS programs, although we recommend reaching out to CDSS directly to if you have specific questions about a specific program, just because we don't want to speak for them. But we would like to note that the legislature has indicated that they would like to, or there is a need to continue conversations to continue to support families, programs, children in California moving forward. But as of now, there is no language or specific directives for moving forward beyond that, other than they would go back into effect following September 30th. As far as the hold harmless, not same thing for that, different for the hold harmless. There is no language currently with regards to the hold harmless moving forward. So as of July 1st, the hold harmless would be going away as far as we know. There are bills. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Virginia.
You're going to say the same thing I was, so keep saying it.
Yeah, so there are bills currently in circulation that are still, that have passed houses and are still in circulation. So they have not, for lack of a better term, died yet from the floor. So that would address some of these things, such as the hold harmless and many of the other questions that we received in the chat to address just some of the challenges that programs are facing.
Yeah, and I will also say the AB 555, which I believe made it out of the Assembly Appropriations Committee today. The superintendent is supporting it, and that's a bill that will really help us because it allows for programs to be funded based on enrollment and not attendance. So we're very excited that that bill has moved forward, and we hope to see some movement on this. Because we know that that is an issue that makes a big difference for all of your programs.
Thank you, Eddie and Virginia. Virginia, I'm going to have you stay on because I actually love this question that came in at 4:17 from Lori Goodman. And she says, when the legislature and the governor are far apart, how do they come to a final budget?
Yeah. They talk. They have ongoing conversations where they work through priorities and come to agreement. I think I told Lori as part of this process, I think it's important for you to share what's important for your programs, share the impact that, for example, being funded based on enrollment would have, the impact that a rate increase would have, those kinds of things. Because they do listen, and hearing from you does make that difference. So they will continue to have conversations, and both houses of the legislature, as I said, have made it pretty clear that childcare and preschool is a priority for them, and so they'll be going into negotiations with that in mind. That being said, money doesn't grow on trees. California doesn't have, can't print its own money. So the state budget condition does impose some constraints because, if you add more money in for state preschool or TK than is proposed, then you have to figure out where to cut on somewhere on another side. So I think that's why we wanted you all to have the information about the budget condition so that you're informed as you have those conversations.
And just to jump in and add one little thing to that too, is as Virginia mentioned, your advocacy is really important. So during those assembly hearings, the Senate hearings, there is an opportunity for public comment. And so always making an effort to get your voice heard and voice your challenges and possible solutions as well is always appreciated. But also if you can come not just with your advocacy, but with some data behind it too, even better, because really that's what we've noticed a lot of times the Assembly and Senate will respond to is when we can respond with data on what's actually been happening in our programs and what's happening on the ground floor with our children and our families and our teachers. So, yeah.
Thank you, Eddie and Virginia. We are almost to the end of our time. I think we can squeeze in one more question. And and Steve, our director, is kind of queuing to that question as well. And this one is from Melanie. And she's asking, for programs who have operated through COVID, we have not recovered yet. Things are not normal and call for a different system to get us through a very difficult time. And I think there was another question about Beverly. Can you clarify the question about certifying no more than 30 days before enrollment? Which program type does that apply to? I thought it was 120 days part day CSPP. Is that correct? So I'm going to call on Crystal to answer that question. And then I think we'll have Steve close us out and give a little bit on the last one.
And yes, that is correct. I did respond to the question in the Q&A, but yes, so for full day CSPP, families can be certified a maximum of 30 days prior to their start date. And for part day CSPP, they can be certified up to 120 days prior to the program year start date. So yes, that is correct. 120 days for part day CSPP. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And so next slide. Let's highlight a few resources for all of you today. I'm going to go pretty fast since we're short on time. To find your assigned program quality implementation or PQI office regional consultant, please visit https://www.cd.ca/ASP, and we'll put that link also in the chat for everyone. To find your assigned early education and nutrition fiscal service analyst, please visit https://www.cde.ca.gov/FG/FAAD.ASP, and we'll put that in the chat as well. For any regulations related questions, you can reach out to your PQI regional consultant or email the EED Title V inbox at eedtitle5@cde.ca.gov. If you email the Title V inbox, please include your agency name and county. Now back to Steve to close us out.
All right. Thank you, Angela. Kudos to you for reading all those URLs. That is the fun part, no doubt. So as we close out today, I just want to appreciate all of you for engaging, for sharing your questions. You know, the budget time can often be something of a, you know, kind of a wondering place for all of us. You know, what's going to happen next. I do, you know, as we've reflected in this cycle where we've had, you know, we have lower revenues for this coming year's budget. I am particularly appreciative of where we are today with regard to the not seeing proposed reductions to early education. For those of you who were here 10, 15 years ago, when we saw some pretty, you know, stark policies go into place, when we had an economic downturn, I'm really appreciative that we don't have that. And so kind of a holding steady approach from the administration, and then from our Assembly and Senate leadership, and seeing those promoting further investments in early education, in particularly reimbursement rates, which we know are critical to getting to wages. So I'm particularly hopeful with this year's and the future of our the future budgets. And you know, we will continue to advocate, lift that up, because we see you, we hear you, and we know that you are critical to children's, not just children's development, but, you know, thinking about kind of the economic benefits. and such that you all support, provide, and should benefit from. So have a wonderful rest of your Thursday and week, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.